Finally got a winner. We're breaking it down here on the Locked On Syracuse podcast. Syracuse takes this one 91-78, an offensive clinic for the Orange. We're going to dive into a lot of different things, including some of the lineups we saw. I think we saw some new stuff. So much for not being a chemistry lab for Jim Boeheim. We'll get into that in just a little bit. We'll also talk about the fabulous performances of Joe Girard as well as Buddy Boeheim. That's coming up next on the Locked On Syracuse podcast.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up? Welcome in. Thank you for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen every single day. Tyler, Aki, Tim Leonard, the only place to get daily Syracuse Orange podcasts. Follow us on Twitter at @LO_Syracuse. And don't forget to check us out on YouTube. We are free and available on all podcast platforms. That includes YouTube. So be sure to give us a nice subscribe there. Comment on the videos as well. We always love interacting with you guys in the YouTube page there. So Syracuse finally gets out of a little bit of a funk. I'm not really going to give a ton of credit to a Pitt win, but this is a solid win here, beating Clemson, even though they were a team that's struggling. Again, you just have to start banking some of these wins and hope for the best sort of down the stretch. But now Syracuse moves to 3-4 in the ACC, a very jumbled ACC at that. And you're looking at a team right now that, again, this is what we talk about when we say that they can win any game. They can go out there and put up 91 against a Clemson team that's not great defensively, but historically, like, Brad Brownell is a good defensive coach.
Yeah.
So it at least inspires some sort of confidence there. They're a team that's ranked much higher than you and Ken Pom as well at 64 versus your 84 heading into this game. And really, it was just a dominant offensive performance, and it starts with Buddy and Joe, who are lighting it up from three and just really getting going throughout.
Yeah, good to see Joe Girard after we talked about maybe this is the negative shooting regression that we were seeing. He was kind of in a little bit of a funk, 3 for his last 15 or 16 going into this game. He lights it up really from the start from 3 in this game. And that's Joe, right? That's the Syracuse Joe coming out. He gives us an A performance. There's never been a B or a C this year, it feels like, as we've touched on. But when he plays like that, they're a different team. And they went to the 3-guard lineup some more. We can talk about that. But I was amazed at just how back and forth and how both teams were getting what they wanted on offense in this game. It was definitely a offensive-minded game from the jump. It's 40-39 at the half, and even in the start of the second half, there was a stretch where it just felt like no one made a stop for like 5 or 6 minutes. And I guess it was pretty aesthetically pleasing basketball, and that's kind of the nice part about when Syracuse is on an offensive-minded team compared to some of their defensive-minded teams.
Yeah, also with Joe, he comes away in this game with 5 assists as well as 4 steals. He got to the rim a little bit as well, got to the free throw line. It's always good to see him attack. He got fouled on the 1 3-pointer as well, and it goes and makes all 7 of his free throws in this game. So that's another good sign, because I'd have to go and check the box scores, but 7's a lot of free throws for a guy like Joe Girard who lives around the 3-point line. And it's just, you need to see that sort of aggression out of your point guard, because there's no way, I think, that Joe Girard is getting 5 assists without being that threat of trying to get to the basket. And I think when he can start to break defenses down, and again, you and I think are both in the camp that he is much better off as a 2-guard. And that's something that having Samir Torrance out there really does for him. But again, you need to see these sort of performances. And the 4 steals, I mean, even though the defense did let up 78 points, there were flashes of the defense playing pretty well in this game. You held a really good 3-point shooting team in Clemson, 15th in the country in 3-point shooting to under 30%. So that's a good sign right there. And I think a lot of it had to do with some of the lineups, and we'll get into some of the lineups in just a second. But Joe Girard, a solid defensive performance, and of course the offense certainly helps.
Yeah, it was funny because at the half, Jim Boeheim, he talks to Syracuse radio at the half briefly when he's leaving the court, and he said something like, "We can't stop anybody. We're not going to beat anybody," or some sort of Boeheim hyperbolic comment when he was upset at the way the first half ended, because it did sort of feel like every first half we've ever witnessed this year, where Syracuse gets up double digits. I think the largest lead in this individual game was 10. And then they only are up by 1. It's like the third or fourth straight game, it feels like, where Syracuse has been up by 1 at the half.
Yeah.
And finally, they put it together in the second half here. The defense still isn't good. And this is a performance that when you're going up against Clemson, it's going to work fine. When you play Duke on Saturday, which we'll preview later on in the week, that is a team that you need to play a lot better defensively. And Clemson, I think, played all right in this game. I thought it was sort of interesting that they went to a smaller lineup. And I don't know, it seems like teams are doing that, and it kind of favors Syracuse. And once again, they dominate on the glass. I mean, this is the first time they've truly dominated probably on the glass, but 7-0 rebounding margin in the ACC. They've won the rebounding battle in all 7 ACC games, which again just continues to kill me in the prop shop, but also continues to become a more amazing storyline that they're somehow 3-4 in the league, but dominate in the statistic that we thought they wouldn't.
So looking at it here, to get to your rebounding number, Syracuse had 30 defensive rebounds in this game. Clemson as a team had 26 total. So when you're winning the battle of the boards 30-4 from a defensive to Clemson's offensive ratio there, I mean, that's the number. That's a dominant performance there, allowing only 4 offensive rebounds, especially with the number of misses that Clemson put up in this game. So you got to be really happy about that if you're Jim Boeheim. And then the 9 offensive rebounds, certainly a nice touch as well on your side of the ball. So, yeah, again, and let's move along a little bit to Buddy here, because, I mean, these are the sort of performances that you expect night in and night out. And I think it's something that Syracuse fans might be taking for granted right now, but who's the guy that every single night next year is going to be your threat to get you 25? I mean, it's not there. You're not going to have someone
Buddy, right?
Hopefully it is Buddy. I think you're kind of hitting it on the head right there. But yeah, I mean, he goes out there, shoots the ball really well. He gets to his spots. He made some tough shots in this game too. Some of those fadeaways where he's just kind of putting it at the rim. And I thought he put together a really nice performance. Obviously, the numbers speak for themselves, but I think the threat that he creates, it helps out the other guys. It helps out Joe. It helps out his brother Jimmy. It helps out Jesse when he is the threat that he is. And if they don't have that next season, it's going to be a long one, because someone's either going to have to step up, whether it be a Joe Girard becomes more consistent as what will probably have to be a 2 guard, or if Benny Williams takes a monster leap offensively, or if you strike gold in the transfer portal. But unless one of those things happen, like, you're not going to easily replace a Buddy Boeheim. Like, these 25 points, these 23-point, 20-point performances, I feel like Syracuse fans are taking way too much for granted right now on what is a losing team for the most part.
Yeah, he does. I mean, he controls the ball a lot. He controls a lot of the volume of possessions to get there, but he still was pretty efficient in this game. I didn't think his defense was great in this game, but offensively, he does his thing. And, you know, when you put a smaller defender on Buddy, if he can elevate, he's going to score. I mean, we've seen it so many times now, and Clemson just had smaller guards on him that weren't that long. So he was just getting to his mid-range area and elevating. And I was watching back the highlights of the tournament run last year. I was just trying to feel something, just trying to get some positive juju. And Buddy, so much of
ice
it
cream.
was,
You had like a pint of ice cream out too while you were doing that.
yeah, I needed it, man. I mean, it's been a rough year. I needed to feel something for a little bit. So I was watching back when the West Virginia game, it was like the entire second half, McNeil got switched on Buddy, and Raftery was on the call with Jim Nantz, and Raftery would just be like, he can elevate, and then he'd go right to his spot and elevate. And that's all he really needs. It's just to be on a smaller defender, and he's going to get 20, 25 points against pretty much any of these teams, unless it's a smaller defender like Alvarado was for Georgia Tech, who's no longer there, that is like a really lockdown defender. But still, I think he usually is in a better spot there.
So you brought up Buddy's defensive struggles. I want to talk about that, because I think some of it is lineup based and some of it is kind of he's burrowing back to some tendencies that maybe he doesn't need to do with given lineups out there. We'll talk about some of the lineup shuffling in just a second. But first, it's the new year, so that means New Year's resolutions. And if yours is about getting fit or eating healthier, make sure Built Bar is part of that plan. Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, and maybe even better than a candy bar. Built Bar makes it easy to stick to your resolution because it's so good, you want to eat it. Unlike other protein bars, which can be chalky or waxy or taste just like a chemical spill, Built Bars are covered in 100% chocolate, and they contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. Compare that to a candy bar, which usually sits around 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. Even if you're not a huge fan of working out, you can at least enjoy a delicious treat, and it's something that is good for you as well. That way, when you enjoy a delicious Built Bar, you can almost count it as a workout. And the best part is they come in so many different flavors, whether it's our favorite here on the show, the peanut butter brownie, coconut almond, raspberry, cookies and cream, salted caramel mint brownie, and many, many more. Plus, Built is always coming out with new flavors as well. So check out built.com to see what limited time flavors they're cooking up for you on the website. Go to built.com, use the promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. So much for not being a chemistry lab, because we saw, I would guess, I haven't laid it all out here, but I would guess we saw 3 lineups yesterday that we have never seen before out of the Syracuse team. Now, some of that is Boeheim Sidibe was out there, and he's obviously been an injury fixture for most of the season. By the way, how shocked were you that Boeheim was the first sub into the game? He ends up only playing 2 minutes. Those were the only 2 minutes. But that, to me, was a firecracker move by Jim Boeheim to sort of light a fire under everyone, say like, all right, this is where I'm going to dig into today. I'm going to put Boeheim in as the first sub of the game.
I just don't get it. Like, these make no sense. The rhyme or reason. I guess it's true. We're not at practice and we don't see what's happening there. And that's everyone's argument for when you critique Boeheim. And that's his personal argument, is that, yeah, you can't really say anything because you aren't at practice. I did hear, by the way, they're talking about on the broadcast, the radio broadcast, that the Monday practice was about as intense as they've ever seen practice for Syracuse, which I thought was interesting. But Boeheim, I think, has looked decent in practice, according to reports, and you kind of just been waiting for that moment, but it didn't come against Wake Forest when Jesse was in serious foul trouble. They went to Jimmy. So I was pretty surprised to see it, and I figured it was only going to be 2 or 3 minutes even when he came in, but I actually thought we were going to see John Bull in this game, if I had to guess who was going to be the sort of flyer for 2 or 3 minutes. And now maybe it makes you wonder, are we going to see Boeheim against Duke? And that's a team that you could use him, because we'll give Jesse his props, I'm sure, at some point, because he did have a great game. But once again, he somehow fouls out in this game.
I mean, yeah, we have to talk about that, because that was one of the most absurd foul outs I've ever seen in my life, I think. In my life. We'll do that in a little bit. But to get back to Sidibe here, I thought he moved well in this game. It's the healthiest I think he's looked in 2 years. And I don't know if he kind of just laid it all out there because he knew, oh, I'm not playing more than 2-3 minutes. I'm going to give it all I can for these 2-3 minutes that I'm going to be out here. But I thought he moved well. He did pick up a foul. So once again, Syracuse picking up 8 fouls from their centers in this game, including the 5 from Jesse. And the other 2 guys picked up 3 in 6 minutes. But I look at it as, listen, if he can spell you for 2 to 5 minutes, like I'd like to see Boeheim maybe ramp up to a 5-minute stretch. I don't think it's going to be much more than that, but he looked healthy. And I don't know if he was just given 110% because he knew it was going to be a short little run for him, but he was moving well. He was very mobile, maybe as mobile as I've even seen him during his time at Syracuse. He got the 1 bucket as well, which was nice to see. Got a nice standing ovation when he came out. Did the classic Boeheim foul where he's clamping down on a shooter. So it was kind of like the full Boeheim experience. And I don't know. I don't know how much we're going to see him moving forward. I would guess he's going to register more DNPs than minutes the rest of the way. But it's good to see him out there. Listen, like, he's a tough kid to not root for. Even though both you and I think that the hype that he gets around his performances is probably a little more overrated, and some Syracuse fans think he's the second coming of Tim Duncan, and that's why this team is struggling and has struggled the last couple of years. But it's good to see him out there. Let's put it that way. It's good to see him out there. I wish he could be out there for longer stretches, but I wouldn't expect him for much more than 3 minutes. Maybe you'll see him out there for 5 minutes one game.
Yeah, I didn't take a ton away from it. I thought he kind of looked as expected, and I guess I had sort of lowered expectations, but he wasn't bad. He was fine. I mean, he did his thing for a couple minutes. It is
he
interesting.
Lit a spark, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me how Jim Boeheim, like no player this year at the start of games has been on a quicker leash than Jesse Edwards. And several times he starts his press game or his post game press conference and says something like, yeah, Jesse just wasn't in it at the start of the game and we had to go to Frank or what. Like, I don't know what Jesse was doing at the beginning. He was stuck. Like, he uses all these negative words around Jesse's start. And I'm with him a little bit. Like, it does seem like there's times where he allows the corner three, but that's, as we've talked about, a really tough thing to ask of
Yeah.
the center and probably more on your lack of athleticism at the forward position than on Jesse. So it's fascinating to me how he expects Jesse to be like Evan Mobley in the first 3 minutes of the game as a defender. And it's just not happening. And then in reality, like we should be probably blaming Jimmy. Like, why doesn't Jimmy get a quick leash every once in a while? Or Cole Swider, who played, I thought, pretty bad in this game on both ends, honestly.
Yeah. Cole was rough. There were a couple of real head scratching moments. Finishes the game with 5 turnovers. Yeah, certainly interesting there. I want to get to a certain lineup that Jim threw out there that I thought had growing pains, but I think has a lot of potential. And it was the lineup that he had of Samir, Buddy, Cole, Benny, and Frank. And I think Frank can be used interchangeably with Jesse. But I build it as this is the most athletic lineup Syracuse can put out there. And when I was watching it play out on the court, first of all, they looked as active and engaged defensively as I've seen a Syracuse team look this season. I grabbed a screenshot of it because I was that intrigued by it. Everyone had all their arms out defensively on every possession. And it's just a little thing like that that goes a long way in constructing the 2-3 defense and making it work and making it at least look a little more imposing than it might actually be in hindsight. This group took their growing pains, I think, but it's one that if you built a little bit more chemistry and if you actually had used this lineup prior to game number 7 in the ACC, I think it has potential to be a good defensive lineup as well as a solid offensive lineup to go with it too, especially if you're using Jesse interchangeably with Frank. Now, I'm not saying this needs to be the starting lineup. I'm not saying this needs to be a lineup that goes out there and gets you 20 to 25 minutes, but I think it's one that if you ran with it for 10 minutes a game, be a nice little curveball. And I think it's something that I really like the prospects of it. There were times where Buddy was out of position defensively in it. And I think that was more of a fact of I haven't played with these guys all season long in this group, in this shell, that I'm sort of relying on tendencies of when Jimmy's out there or when Cole's out there and I have to cover that area as opposed to when Benny's out there. And he's playing a much better defense than some of the other guys that Syracuse has thrown out there.
Yeah. We have seen him experiment a little bit more, and I use that word, obviously. Yeah. Shout out to Paul Sibilia over on ESPN Radio there. But, which, by the way, real quick tangent on that.
Yeah.
Just fundamentally, I just have a problem with that quote. Like, if we didn't experiment, he said something like, if you don't experiment, or you shouldn't experiment at your job in any line of work. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking
totally wrong.
Yeah.
If we didn't experiment, we wouldn't be here right now.
Right. We'd have a terrible podcast if we didn't try new things or try and come up with new ideas. So it's total sidebar, but just a terrible quote, I thought. I fundamentally just totally disagree in any line of work with that strategy.
That is the old line of thinking, I think. Like tech companies these days, if you're not experimenting, if you're not trying to innovate, if you're not coming up with a new idea, you're out.
Yeah.
Like you become BlackBerry.
And in fairness to Jim Boeheim, I think what he meant is that he tries stuff in practice, but if it's not working in practice, he's not just going to try it in the game just to try it and see if it'll work in the game. It's just the way that he phrased the quote just didn't come across as very well. But anyway, the lineup here that you're talking about, we probably have seen it at times this year because as one of our listeners, I think it was Tony, tweeted us at one point this year, it's Onondaga state law to get all 3 of those bench guys, whether it's Frank, Benny, and Symir out there at the same time. So now you're just adding Cole and Buddy to that mix, which I think Cole is still a minus defensively. And I think Frank, even in this game, didn't look great defensively. But you're right. That's an athletic group on a non-athletic team. And that's something we've been sort of craving for is using those guys that help you out on the defensive end a little bit more and dipping into the bench more Symir played 14 minutes in this game, and it feels like we're trending towards him playing 15 minutes a night here because he's being used a lot when Joe Girard is also on the court in that 2-guard lineup, and it's working, in the 3-guard lineup, I should say.
Yeah, and again, Cole being out there isn't necessarily an endorsement of Cole's defense. Cole being out there is a vote of no confidence in Jimmy's. I mean, because
But they're both bad.
they're both bad. I think Cole at least brings the dimension of length a little bit more, and he can at least spread the floor out a little more offensively as well on the other end. But yeah, no, I agree with you. None of them were too enticing of an option. But yeah, we saw some different lineups. I think for the most part, things worked. I'd like to see the uber athletic lineup that can be strung together by the Syracuse team a little bit more. I think it certainly helped them. And I think even though I don't think I'd have to go back and check the numbers on it. I don't think Syracuse came out in the plus in terms of the run of the plus minus while that group was out there. But there were things that I saw that inspired confidence. Like right away, you saw a block from Frank and a block from Benny. And it's just those little things that you can get away from helping a little bit here or there because you've got the athleticism to recover and make splash plays like that. So it's something that I would like to see a little bit more of. And who knows if we'll see a little bit more of it. We also saw plenty of 3-guard lineup in this one too. And I think that stuff works. I think experimenting at this point in the season, like, can't hurt at this point.
Right.
You might as well try some things out a little bit. All right. But we will get into some other stuff, including Cole's struggles, as well as Jesse shining once again in this one. But first, this is it. The putt to win the tournament. If you sink it, the championship is yours. But on your backswing, your hat falls over your eyes. Is this how you're running your business? Poor visibility because you're still relying on spreadsheets and outdated finance software. To see the full picture, you need to upgrade to NetSuite by Oracle. NetSuite is the #1 cloud financial system to power your growth with visibility and control of your financials, inventory, HR planning, budgeting, and more. NetSuite is everything you need to grow all in one place. With NetSuite, you can automate your processes and close your books in no time while staying well ahead of your competition. 93% of surveyed businesses increase their visibility and control after upgrading to NetSuite. Over 28,000 businesses already use NetSuite, and for the new year, NetSuite has a new financing program for those ready to upgrade at netsuite.com/locked. So head on over to netsuite.com/locked for this special one-of-a-kind financing offer on the #1 system for growing businesses. netsuite.com/locked. All right, we'll close up the shop here. We do want to talk about some good things, and that is Jesse. Although, I guess when we do tread into the Jesse conversation, we do have to mention that he had 2 fouls with 1:38 to go. You're thinking, all right, this is the one. He's not going to foul out. And then puts on a Herculean effort to will his way to the bench. Picks up 3 fouls in the span of 35 seconds. I've never seen anything like this. Like, this is even low for Syracuse center standards. I don't know if you saw the graphic, but they did it was funny. I think it was Dave O'Brien and Randolph Childress on the call of this one. By the way, I really liked Randolph Childress in this game. I thought he did a really good job sort of breaking down some stuff with both Syracuse and Clemson. But they were talking about, oh, this is a good sign. Like, Jesse Edwards only has 1 foul. Oh, Jesse Edwards only with 2 fouls. Like, he's had a real problem with fouling out. But what do you and I always say? If you had to guess, he probably averages like 1.3 fouls in the first half.
It might not be that low, but it feels like it.
It feels like he racks 2 through 5 up in the second half for the most part, it feels like. And he has 2 fouls. You're feeling good. We didn't do it on the prop shop this week, but we have to do it next week now.
Mm-hmm.
The Jesse Edwards over under 4 fouls. And I mean, you're cashing your ticket. You're ripping it up if you're an over on the 4 fouls of Jesse Edwards. And he finds a way. You can say, ticky-tack here, ticky-tack there. He found a way to get his ass on the bench. And it's a clinic, but you can't take away from what he did in this game. A double-double, 15 points, 11 rebounds, 4 blocks, which you and I were filling out the stats that you see on the graphics here of the Locked On Syracuse YouTube page. And we were like, really? Only 4 blocks? Felt like he had more.
It feels like
in this
more
game.
every time.
It felt like he had 6 or something like that, but still a very, very nice effort by Jesse in this game. And again, they need him, especially against teams that are going to hurl smaller lineups at Syracuse. You need Jesse to get touches really on every possession because he's going to be a threat to score, or at least a threat to get to the free throw line here, because what he finished 7 of 10 from the free throw line. You'll take that.
Yeah.
I like an aggressive center. We have not seen an aggressive offensive center in quite some time.
He's clearly working on his free throw motion too. It seems like he's pretty much shooting with one hand, which I know that's what you're supposed to, but I'm saying like the guide hand is dropping a lot earlier
Right.
than previously, it seems like.
Mhm.
But it is funny. Maybe that he had 6-7 blocks and then they saw PJ Hall dunk on him and the stats guys, we'll take away a
We'll
couple
take one
blocks
or
from
two.
him because
Yeah.
as good of a game as he had, I'm sure he's getting razzed a little bit from the guys based on that poster dunk from PJ Hall, which
Yeah.
PJ Hall was apparently a little bit hurt in this game, and he still really impressed me. It was cool to see a battle of probably the two most improved players in the conference. And Brad Brownell was talking with Matt Park pregame about Syracuse, and he said something interesting that stood out to me. He said that Syracuse and Jim Boeheim does not get enough credit in their coaching staff for developing players. And he was like, look, I remember when we won a game down in Littlejohn, Jesse was forced into the game because of foul trouble late, and he fumbled away a last possession and just didn't know what to do with the ball. And now they're literally running plays for him, and he's an integral part of the offense. And he was talking about just basically how much growth Jesse Edwards has had, which I think we're all sort of guilty of because we watch it every game, and this has become the norm now. I will say this is only his second career double-double, so I like to see that he's finally getting up there rebounding-wise as well with 11 boards in this game. But I don't know. I think it's amazing still when you step back and think, yeah, this guy was hardly playing last year, and we went into the season thinking he was probably going to be like 8 points a game, something like that. Now we're running plays for him.
Yeah, he got Brad Brownell's vote for most improved in the conference last night. I think there's no doubt about that. But here's the one thing that I'm going to be intrigued. It's not going to happen this year. I'd love to see it happen next year. Can he develop that 15-foot jump shot? Because I don't think he's got a bad shooting motion. Like, it looks natural at the free throw line. I think he might be able to, if he can unlock that, you're talking about a potential NBA player at that point. If he can get that 15-foot jumper down, be a 7-foot shot blocker who's got offensive prowess. The one thing that's been most impressive to me with Jesse this season, his footwork is fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, his ability to
really
get to the rim and finish with the hook shot, that a lot of that comes down to footwork. And to me, that has been the most impressive part of his development. Also, they were talking about this on the broadcast too, and I agreed with it, but he finds ways to get blocks, but keep them in bounds and lead it into a break the other way. Like he had one play, one of them, it was the Cole Swider inexplicable turnover where he blocked, where Jesse got the block. Cole picked up the rebound, puts the ball above his head, and then gets it ripped away, and it turns into a dunk for Clemson in an inexplicable turnover. I would have liked to see Cole turn up floor and try to get moving down the other way. But it's something that I remember Anthony Davis, they had a stat, it was a crazy stat for Anthony Davis back when he won the national title in his only season of college basketball. But his blocks, he was keeping them all like inbounds and pretty much turning them into turnovers as opposed to the other team getting possession. And that's a really valuable skill. Like, that is a skill. It's not just a luck factor. Some of it is luck, but I think there is a skill to it as well. And Jesse Edwards is picking up on that. He's getting about 3 blocks a game. He's top 10 in the country in total blocks. I think he moved into 7th yesterday. And I've been really impressed with that from him. And I've been really impressed with the footwork offensively. We haven't seen a player develop quite like this at Syracuse over the last couple of years.
And the exciting thing is he still has a lot he could improve on because he has not been playing basketball for a very long time. And you see that when you watch him play. Like, most of his flaws are coming from just not playing for a long time, I feel like. And you can tell the game sort of speeds up on him at times. And that's when he gets into those ticky-tacky fouls that he doesn't need. And he's maybe got to work on some of that. I mean, he definitely has to work on some of that stuff, but also even, you know, when he gets the ball in the post, sometimes it speeds up on him. If he can improve himself as a post passer, you're talking about his jump shot. There's a lot of areas where he can improve still. And namely, the one is definitely staying out of foul trouble here, especially as we look ahead to Duke. That's a game where if he's in foul trouble the entire game, forget about it, because we would have beat Wake Forest if he didn't pick up, you know, a 4th or a 5th foul that was costly. And I'm not blaming the game on him because, again, he's really taken a step up this year. And I think we have taken that for granted, myself included, and the entire fan base probably has taken it for granted a little bit. But at the end of the day, still, if he stays on the court, then maybe we're looking at 1 or 2 more ACC wins.
Yeah, no, I wholeheartedly agree with you there. He has been an absolute difference maker for this team. And it's one of the few things that you can look forward to next year and be like, hey, at least we have that, right? Because
Yeah.
this is a really valuable piece. I mean, you may be talking about the guy who might be the best player on the team next year, which I don't know if that's a good thing.
He
Probably
needs to be the
not,
leader
but
too, more
yeah,
vocal. I'm excited to see him next year as the anchor in the zone, right? Because then
yeah,
he's been around the block a little bit more and he could probably be a little bit more vocal.
yeah. No, I'm with you there. Real quick before we get out of here, Cole Swider, 5 turnovers, 7 points. Didn't shoot the ball well from 3 in this game. Didn't attack a whole heck of a lot. Only shot the ball 7 times as well. It's almost Joe-like, where you either get a really good performance out of Cole or a really bad. Like, Cole Swider either makes a lot of winning plays in a game or a lot of losing plays in a game. This was one of those where he made a lot of losing plays, and it nearly cost them in some pivotal moments. And like, it's tough to argue about it because there's really no alternative to it. Like, at the end
Yeah.
of the day, I'm giving you 3 forwards, all right? And you need to put together a defensive lineup that also provides a little bit of an offensive spark too. Jimmy, Cole, Benny. Like, what are you rolling with there?
Well, it's tough because Benny has been worse than Cole. And I don't think Cole's been good. Don't get me wrong, but Benny's been pretty much a 0 on offense for the entire
Right.
season. He showed some flashes against Wake Forest, and then that gets into why is he a 0 on offense? If he was playing 20, 25 minutes, would we have seen more from him? Which is tough. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation that we can't really dig into right now. But I think Cole has probably been the most underwhelming of those 3 because you really needed him to be like a Quincy Guerrier or even Alan Griffin's regular season production this year. He was replacing a lot, and he just hasn't been that guy. And, you know, Jim Boeheim said something post game like he tries to dribble and he can't, and he loses the ball. Like, we're talking about a guy that we thought might have been our second or third leading scorer, and he can't really dribble or can't create a shot. Like, there are times, I'm not trying to be too hard on the guy because he gets to like a baseline turnaround jumper or something like that, and you're like, wow, that looked pretty good. But when he's not giving you much on defense and he's not that athletic and he doesn't really fit into your system that great outside of being a little bit longer, it's really tough, man, because teams are taking away his 3-point shot and they just can't really get shots for him right now.
Yeah. I would probably say of the underwhelming guys, I would put Benny probably over
Yeah,
Cole.
I guess that's fair. I mean, he's been more
Yeah.
underwhelming, but him and Cole have equally been like they were supposed to be key
Right.
parts of this
Yeah.
team, and they haven't. And that's why
Yeah.
we're not that good, honestly. I mean, Jesse's taken a step up. Joe's been fine. He's been very up and down. And I do think Cole's ups have not been as good as Joe's ups,
No.
which
No.
his
Yeah.
downs may be a little bit better, but I mean, there hasn't really been a game this year where it's been like, that's it. That's the Cole Swider we need outside of like little stretches.
Yeah.
And that's kind of concerning because we're pretty deep into the season here.
Yeah. Again, we're coming up on ACC game number 8, and it's not going to be
Right.
easy. It's going to be a pissed off Duke team that just lost to Florida State. So we will preview that with you guys later on in the week. We'll also get to some stuff on tomorrow's show. Littered. We're going to go all around because there's some football stuff, a big recruit pickup, a big transfer potentially looming as well. We can dive into that on the football side of things, and also we'll get to a couple other hoops thoughts as well from the week. Chris Bunch had a nice game the other day. We can maybe talk about some recruiting stuff as well tomorrow on the show, and whatever else is piquing our interest and yours as well. Thanks for listening. Follow us on Twitter at @LO_Syracuse. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts as well. And we'll talk to you guys tomorrow.